Hello everyone, this is Deb, and I'm finishing my Mr. Todd book box. This is a little tool that I made out of polymer clay and needles, and I'm using it to scratch up the sides so it looks a little bit like pages. I'm just giving it a little sand here and there, and I'll continue to do that all the way around the box. Then I'm going to put a wash on it after I'm done sanding it a little bit. I'll probably go over it again with the little tool that I made. I've often made tools out of polymer clay and needles and pins and that sort of thing. First, I'm just going to go around and touch up the white or the cream color. I'm just using matte paint that comes right out of the bottle. It's not an expensive acrylic paint. It's actually one I picked up at a garage sale. I've often found paints at garage sales and yard sales and charity shops. Sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not so good, but it does save money. So, and I try to buy as many things as I can at charity shops and resale shops and places like that. So I'll just touch this up. I'll go all the way around. I'm just using a very fine sable brush that I usually use for oil paints. But I'm very careful about my brushes. I clean them very well after I'm done using them. I use a very mild soap and hot water, and that seems to help a lot. Again, I'll just touch this up a little bit, and then I will go over it again with that tool. Oops, I got a little too far, but I'll go back and use that same color I used on the outside of the book to touch up whatever I goof up here. And there it's that tool again. Now I'm going to put a coating of PVA on this after I get done cutting this piece of fabric. This is vintage fabric. It's supposedly from the 1920s. I'm not sure, but that's what I was told. And it does have that look about it. So it's just cotton, and I'm trimming it right now with some tailor scissors. I don't let my husband find these scissors. I've said this before. He'll take them out into the barn and use them to fix his tractor, so I hide them. They're very sharp, and I have a couple of pairs of these scissors, and I guard them carefully. And I'm just going to trim this up. Doesn't have to be perfect because no one will see it. It'll flatten out. And I'll take the pins out as soon as I'm done figuring out exactly where it ought to go. Just put on the PVA, and it's acid balanced, and it also is a very flexible glue. It's for bookbinding, and it's good to use a generous amount. So that's what I'm going to do, right to the edges as far as I can go. It dries clear. It does have quite a bit of a sheen to it though when it dries. And I'll just press this in place with my hands. I'll take the pins out after I'm done pressing it in place, and then I'll press it again with my fingers. Now, I'm not really concerned about getting it perfectly straight because I am going to put some ribbon around it, grosgrain ribbon, to clean it up after this dries and I'm done with this step. But I want to make sure that I can put this in and so the book can open and close as well. And I'm just taking the pins out. I use extra fine pins, and I even have some insect taxidermy pins that I use for antique fabrics because they're so thin they don't pierce the fabric or damage it. But that's not what I'm using now. I usually use those when I make doll clothes. All right, let's in place pretty much. I'll just keep finger pressing it until it's smoothed out, and it'll tighten as it dries. It looks a little busy, so what I've decided to do is I am going to, once I put the book plates in it on the top, and you'll see what I mean, there's some text and a picture that I decided to put on, and I decided against putting the title on the front page because it started to look too busy. I'm going to put a glaze over it and calm all the colors down and pull them all together. Now I've gone ahead and put the front cover on, and I haven't glazed the outside of the book yet or put the spine information on. I'm just going to pull this fabric back down. It has some of that tacky PVA on it, and I wanted to make sure that I could pull it down, and then I'll re-glue it so that it has a crease in it so that it doesn't bunch up when you try to open or close the book, because I want this to be able to open and close. Now I'm not going to sell this box. This is my first Beatrix Potter book box, and I'm going to keep this one. And so I'm doing it for myself. Of course, I do all my artwork for myself, actually, in a way. But this is a learning process for me, so I'm just going to forge ahead. And if I think of it this way, that it's for me, I'm not so nervous about it. Now, this is just a piece of cardstock that is going to be cut and placed over the raw edges of the foam and on the top. And you'll see that as I go along. I put that on. I also used the PVA and flattened it. So that's ready to go to be glazed soon. And then this is the book plate. And I'm going to cut this out and place it, as you see. At first when I did this, I thought, well, I need the title on the first page, but it just looked funny to me, so I actually decided not to do it. Now I'm making a glaze, and I'm using clear leveling gel by Golden and Winsor & Newton. It's just raw umber acrylic in a tube. And burnt sienna whole by Golden, which is, of course, acrylic. Both are acrylic. I like the leveling gel because it really adds body to a wash, and then I add water to it as well, so it thins out. This will dry lighter. It will sink in somewhat to the into the paper. I'm going to just go over the inside again. I want to pull this all together, and I'll give it a good going over, and then I have some cheesecloth here that I'm using to clean it up. And I'll go around the corners too to cover any white spots that might have shown up or places where paint has been missed. And I'll just keep going until I feel like I've covered most of it. I'll probably do this again, and then I'll go around with a paintbrush and clean up everything with a darker color. And then I'll have to let this dry. But first I'm going to finish the front, where I have covered the foam and the balsa wood. And I did it this way, in case you haven't seen the other videos, because I'm keeping the perspective of Beatrix Potter's original illustration. And that's why it looks the way it does. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to get everything in there. Though she didn't really use proper perspective, she used perspective, I think, to tell her story, which is something I do when I do book illustrations. I manipulate perspective so that I can tell the story. When I do my regular paintings, I stick to perspective, the strict traditional perspective. And now I'm just covering up the bookends with that same wash. I will do this whole cover with that. And then I'm going to go back in and put some texture in this area so that it looks like it belongs. It needs to be texturized, so I'll just go over that and do a little dry brushing. It's not really a dry brush, but it's close to dry brushing. It's not a very wet brush, but I'll just keep going, put some of the color back in. This is the raw umber, and I'm just stippling it a little bit. No, I guess that's not really called stippling. What is that called? I'm just texturizing it. I'll just get my sponge, not my sponge, but my little piece of cheesecloth out and keep working it in. Getting into those corners. I know it really aggravates people when they watch a video and they miss a spot on something. And I'm sure I'm doing it too. But don't fear, I will in the end get them all. I always go over everything again and make sure that everything is given a good cover. So I'm just going to go over this stone floor again and get the brush in there and put some more definition into it, and then I will wipe it off. This has been a very enjoyable process for me, and this is the first for this channel. Of course, I'm very new here, so I will be doing book boxes again. I'm going to do, the next one is going to be Otto of the Silver Hand, and that one will be a real challenge, and it will be completely different than this, and it's a completely different subject. Now this is the grosgrain ribbon that I'm going to put around. I will glue that with fabric tack this time. Fabric tack is sometimes hard to use, but it's a very good product. And then I have my trusty scissors, and I'll go around the whole edge and clean that up. And pick some lint out of there, because even cheesecloth occasionally leaves little strings. And I got that. It was a vintage ribbon. All right. And I used fabric tack for all of it and pressed it into place. And now I'm going to arrange the, I am taking that title out of there. I just wanted to try one more time to make sure that I didn't really want it in there, and I don't. So I'm just going to arrange these. I'm just going to eyeball them once I glue them on. I find for me it works best to just look at it and try to get it into the right position. And there is some give with the glue that I use, so I'm just going to use the PVA again. And there it is. They're glued in. That's the magic of video. I didn't want to make you watch me glue that one more time. So, all right. That's not quite finished, of course, but there's more steps. I'm just using that cardstock to make sure that the back stays clean. Now I'm going to cut out this picture of Beatrix Potter that was colorized. It's a portrait of her when she was quite young. And of course, probably nobody will see the back of this book, but it's just for me. I want to put that on as a tribute to her. I loved Beatrix Potter's books when I was a child. I still love them. And I have many of them. And some of them are quite old. But then so am I. Many of them were from the 1920s and 30s that I have, that I bought from an old library sale. I didn't get any older ones that were older. Now I'm going to do the spine. I'll put the title there. I'm using PVA again. And the colors are going to blend in so that it will be barely visible when I put the wash on after I'm done with that. it will look like it's printed, or pretty much, unless you really get close. I matched the color of the original book that was online, and then printed it out and printed out the lettering from the spine of the book, original book, and enlarged it. And I'm going to put Beatrix Potter on the bottom, and I'm just gluing that now, cutting it and gluing it. And there it is, Beatrix Potter. All right, now I'll let all that dry, and then I'm going to glaze the entire box. And I also need to do something about that. The written portion, I need to put a border around that as well, so it's more consistent with the drawing above. And the portion that's written is actually from the book where he is entering the bedroom, where he knows the badger is there. You'll have to read it. I'm also going to frame her in a little bit. Okay, now I'm just going to go over and make sure there's no little bits of glue. Just scrape those off. The good thing about fabric tack is you can peel it off to a certain extent. And that's just what I'm doing. I'm just cleaning it up. Okay. It opens and closes easily, so I'm happy with that. I went ahead and started already with this glaze, and it dries lighter, of course. It goes on quite dark, but I want to pull the whole image together. This is the same glaze I used on the inside of the box and on the outside where the pages are, and I'll go over the entire book with this same glaze. Pull the colors together a little bit, and the pattern, calm that pattern down a bit. I'm even going over the ribbon, and I'll go over just every bit of it. And it's that same glaze that I showed you in the beginning with the leveling gel, the raw umber from Winsor & Newton acrylics, and the golden burnt sienna. And there's water in it as well. But I make enough of it so that I can, do everything when I do this sort of thing. It does have a little bit of a sheen to it when it dries, but at some point, after a couple of weeks, I will probably go over the entire book with a matte finish in most areas of this. So, but I won't show that because it's going to be a couple weeks before this is completely dry, and I can dry to my satisfaction anyway. I can do that without any worries. All right. And I'll let that dry, and then I'm going to do the outside. Now I'm just going to go in some of the corners with some more paint so that I can make sure this little bits of white that show or places that attract attention will be closed up even a little bit better. I'm just going to give that a good mix. The consistency of the paint from the tube and the golden paint is completely different. And I guess I better drop a little bit of this in there because that will help. Now I'm going over again with the same glaze that I made before. And I'll just wipe it off. This time I cut the sleeve off of that t-shirt I was using the other day for one of my videos when it was still on me. So I cut the sleeves off and I'm using it as a rag now. All right. This solution dries rather quickly, so you have to work pretty fast, although I have speeded the video up quite a bit. Okay. I'll do the spine. And when this dries, as I said, it will blend in pretty well. Okay, now I'm going to place the objects. The hunting scene image, I'm going to use wood glue to put that in place. And I added a little picture hanger on it because that was in the photo, something similar to it. Of course, this is not exactly like the image that's in Beatrix Potter's original illustration, but it's very close, and it's colorful. And I'm just going to set it in there, position it, and I'm putting that on top of that to make sure it doesn't warp. And I already glued in the other little medallion that you see there. Now I'm trying to figure out the best way to put him in, and I'm going to glue in the door. Now you'll see the back of the door looks pretty rough, but I'm not going to waste the paint for something no one's ever going to see, so I'm just going to put some wood glue on the edge, and I'll clean that up. And I just take a Q-tip and run it along and clean up whatever else is extra, and that will stay nicely. Okay, I also put the border around the narration, or the text, and I did that already. I just painted it in, and I'll clean that up a little bit too. Now, I put a little piece of clear plastic behind him from a clear plastic straw that I cut, and that's how he's going to stand away from the wall. And I'm going to use a combination of hot glue and fabric tack to put him in. The hot glue will give me some time, will help it to stay, and then I will also put fabric tack on the bottoms of his feet so that it's very sturdy. All right, I'm just fussing with him a little bit to make sure he looks good and he's bent the right way, or as close as I can get him to be. So I did put the glue on, and you can see that little piece of plastic shining, and I glued it into the wall. And I'm going to put a little bit more fabric tack on that one foot and push him into place. There he is. Okay, he's positioned, and I'm just going to clean off any little strings of glue that might have stretched out from the hot glue gun. And this is essentially done. This took me quite a while, and there he is, Mr. Todd. He's sneaking around the bedroom door. Now I just want to finish framing her, Beatrix Potter's portrait in. And I'm using a fountain pen. I actually got this, it's a real fountain pen, and it's from the dollar store, Dollar Tree. And it was $1.25. And it works really well, and it came with several cartridges. So I'm going to use that, and I know it's water soluble, so that's fine. I'm not trying to be real precise. I want it to look a little grungy around the edges because the border around the illustration that's in black and white and around the text is a little grungy, so I'm just keeping it that way. And I know that the wash I'm going to put on it's going to thin that out a bit, but that's okay. I'm going to keep it in mind while I do it. Then I'll let it dry, and I'll go over her face with the wash too. There's my stuff. I keep it taped up so that it doesn't dry out. I'm just cutting it with a knife, and get a good paintbrush. And again, I've got a sable brush. I've had this brush for many years. It's actually for oil paint. Like I said, the other one's the sable one is too, but I use whatever brushes I think are going to work well. There, that's what I meant. It's going to wash out a little bit, but that's okay. It will be fixed. And just take some of it off, and I'll just go around it again and again until I'm satisfied with it. Once this is done and it dries, the box is done. So we're almost there. And as I said, this does dry rather quickly. It's not like days. Some glues you have to wait a very long time for them to dry and set up, and some paints have to set up quite a long time, but this wash that I make does not need that much time. It starts drying as soon as you put it down, unfortunately. So just wipe some of the excess off, not all of it. Okay. And I'll let this dry, and then I'll photograph it so that you can see what it looks like. And I'm just going to touch this up a little bit. I actually have some of that wash on my brush because I use the fountain pen to go around the text, and I'm just making sure that it's set. And I did want it to have a little bit of a rough edge around it, so it's not so clean. On one page, she had the color illustration of Mr. Todd sneaking around the corner into the room through the door. And this one is him sneaking into the kitchen looking for the badger before he goes into the bedroom where Mr. Badger, whatever his name is. It's not Mr. Badger, but where the badger is sleeping. Okay. And I just have to let that dry just a little bit before I close this up. I don't want any of this to get on his clothes, so, okay. And there he is. Okay. And it's all done. Well, thank you for watching. It's not quite finished yet, though. I'm going to show you photographs of this. And I'm just going to go over this a little bit, too, instead of closing up. But thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm. And since I'm new, it helps me a whole lot. I'd like to make more of these videos, and if I feel that they're helping people or they're enjoying these videos, it's giving them ideas, I'll make more.